Is this guy crazy? You may be asking yourself that in a minute. Good morning, Peter Goertz. I'm a psychiatrist, and I'm going to talk about paranormal experiences in psychiatry and paranormal experiences in general. And I'm talking about non-conventional experiences, so experiences that are outside of the realm of our usual conventional, logical, material focus. And to me, those experiences are wonderful and they are a positive thing because they help me realize that there's a lot more to the world than people often realize, and they make life a lot more fun just to realize that there's a lot more to this world and a lot more to living. All right, so I'm talking about experiences that are not easily conventionally explained, but that of course does not mean that they don't exist. So one example, quick example, my son and I were, years ago, my son and I were in the car. I was about to drive him to school, and we both noticed looking into the house, we left the light in the living room on, or the dining room actually, and I thought, it's too late. I don't want to go back into the house. I'll be late to drop him off to school. I'll be late to work. So we just left the light on, and there was no one at home all day. And it was a chandelier light, so with a lot of bulbs in it. And we got home at the end of the day. I picked him up from school. We drove home. And at the end of the day, we got home, and the dining room light was off. I couldn't believe it. I thought, all these bulbs from the chandelier burnt out? That's impossible. So I flipped the light switch and it came on. So what does that mean? Maybe an intruder came into the house and turned the light off. I doubt it. There was no one at home as far as I know. So you could say, again, is this guy crazy? Does he believe in ghosts? But somehow the light got turned off. All the bulbs were intact. I flipped the light switch, it came on. So that's one example of what I'm talking about. It's fun to think about to me. So that also touches on a general thing about science. In my opinion, the essence of science is keeping an open mind. So just because we cannot explain something definitely does not mean that it does not exist. So we want to really keep an open mind, and that's how I think in the history of science, a lot of interesting things have been found because people were not closed-minded. Again, just because we can't prove how something happens, that does not mean that it does not exist. So, patient experience, one patient experience I'm going to talk about. A gentleman, I was working at the VA, a Vietnam combat veteran, a lot of medical problems, and he was having major heart issues as far as I remember, and he was being resuscitated. So what we call in medicine coding. He was being, his chest was being compressed, he was being ventilated, and he was essentially dead. He was being revived. His wife was at the other end of the room. He could not see her from his bed. And there was a whole team of people trying to resuscitate him, revive him. And when I saw him, he'd survived that. So when I saw him, he talked about that. And he said during that experience, he left his body. He was at the top of the ceiling. He was at the ceiling of the room. He could see his wife. He could see himself. And he described that aspect of it. And again, you could say that's nonsense. It proved to me that that happened. But in my opinion, we want to keep an open mind. So patients will tell you things like that, and people will tell you things like that. It's just in my opinion, it's part of the human experience. There is more to life than the tangible material realm, and it's worth embracing that. So that also tells us, in my opinion, the essence of who we are, the essence of who you are is non-physical. So you're not defined by your body or your belongings or your career, your achievements. And you do not necessarily have to look like whoever you feel is being portrayed as beautiful in the media. You do not necessarily have to have plastic surgery. You can realize that the essence of who you are is not physical or tangible, and that can help your self-esteem. Another brief anecdote of a patient also a VA patient from many years ago. He told me that his deceased wife came back the previous night and had sex with him. That sounds at least potentially psychotic, but in my opinion, this particular gentleman was not psychotic. He was functioning, he was fine psychiatrically in other respects. So you want to keep an open mind to people's experiences. There are experiences that are not easily explainable by our conventional thinking, but they're very common and people will tell you about them. Patients will tell you about them. Another brief anecdote, a patient had moved into a new apartment and she was taking a bath, and all of a sudden 2 people came in, and she said one of them put their hand on her shoulder or something like that, and she became panicked, ran out of the bathtub, ran downstairs to the doorman, and this was in New York City and in an apartment building. She ran to the doorman downstairs naked, and then she was brought to a hospital because she was felt to be psychotic. But the doorman, when she came downstairs and she described those people to the doorman who had come into the bathroom and scared her so much, she said the doorman said, "Oh, those are the people that used to live in that apartment," because based on her description, that's what they looked like. So I was her psychiatrist in the hospital. I did not see any evidence of psychosis. And after several days, she was discharged without psychiatric medication and seemed fine. So again, there are experiences that sound very strange and people behave very strangely, but they do not necessarily mean someone's psychotic and needs ongoing psychiatric treatment. She could benefit, of course, from psychotherapy to digest that experience, of course. And that also ties into another question. What are auditory or visual hallucinations? Where do they come from? And I can't say I have a good idea about that, what the cause of that is. You can say that it's biochemical, and there definitely are biochemical correlates to hallucinations and psychosis in general, or so-called psychosis in general. For instance, if someone uses methamphetamine, they can become paranoid, can hear things. So there definitely is a biochemical aspect. However, that may not be the entire story, and for all I know, people who hear things may be tapping into a different dimension. All right, thank you. Bye.